Hello, everyone. On behalf of the entire early childhood team here at UAGC, we want to welcome you to the 8th annual Early Childhood Conference. We are super excited that you are here with us. We have an amazing keynote. I am Dr. Tisha Shipley, and along with my colleague, Dr. Stephanie Hield, we are your conference chairs. Our keynote kickoff is the Enlightened Brain, Unveiling Neuroscience's Role in Shaping Early Education. You do not want to miss this session. Right now, I do want to give Dr. Beattie the proper introduction. Dr. Ellen Beattie is an educational leader, innovator, and consultant specializing in positive academic leadership, online teaching and learning, and neuroscience. As an assistant professor in the PhD in the UAGC doctoral program, she strategically supports her students and makes sure that they are successful. Dr. Beattie's teaching career began in 2007 and currently spans undergraduate through doctoral students in the content areas of student success, educational leadership, and educational technology. Her intense focus on creating conditions where all students can thrive earned her a recent nomination as a Distinguished Faculty Member of the Year. Dr. Beattie's research mingles cognitive and behavioral neuroscience, positive psychology, and evidence-based wellness practices. Her most recently published work, The Power of the Positive, Enhancing Online Student Engagement for Adult Literacy Learners, is highlighted in Adult Literacy Education, the International Journal of Literacy, Language, and Numeracy. She is amazing. Dr. Beattie, thank you so much for being here today.
Just 1 minute. I'm trying to advance my slide.
That is okay. It's technology. All right, let's get started. For just a moment, we kindly request your attention for a brief moment in the spirit of transparency and utmost respect for our community. We have some information we'd like you to read on this disclaimer screen. By taking just a few moments to read through this disclaimer, you empower yourself with important information regarding the boundaries of our knowledge sharing environment. All right, please just take 1 moment to read through this slide also. And then together, we're going to embark upon some exciting topics in early childhood education. Dr. Beattie, thank you for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shipley. We are living in an amazing time, continually building on the decade of the brain's well-funded neuroscience research, which has armed us with the knowledge that we have the power to transform how we teach, learn, and grow. In this exploration, we'll delve into the developing brain's landscape, revealing how neurobiology and early experiences intertwine to shape young minds. We'll distinguish between truths and fiction of brain-based learning, emphasizing practical strategies for attention, emotional regulation, resilience, and memory. Our journey will bridge cutting-edge neuroscience with hands-on educational practices, offering a blueprint for nurturing the full potential of every child in every early learning experience. Let's begin by considering something that's truly awe-inspiring, the human brain. Inside each of our skulls is the most complex structure known in the universe, an organ with approximately 86 billion neurons. Each one of these neurons can form thousands of connections, known as synapses, with other neurons. In fact, the human brain has around 100 trillion synapses, creating an incredibly intricate web of communication. These neural networks transmit electrical impulses and chemical signals facilitated by neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, and acetylcholine. These signals allow us to feel emotions, to process thoughts, and to control every action, from breathing to solving complex problems. It's no exaggeration to say that the brain is the foundation of everything that we do. What's even more remarkable is that the brain is constantly changing. This process, known as neuroplasticity, is what allows us to learn, to adapt, and to grow throughout our lives. In early childhood, this plasticity is at its peak, making it a crucial window for development. Experiences and interactions during this time literally shape the architecture of the brain, influencing how children will think, feel, and behave for the rest of their lives. As educators and professionals working with young children, you are not just teaching them skills and knowledge. You are helping to sculpt their neural pathways, laying the groundwork for their future potential. That's an incredible power that you hold in your hands. And that's why understanding the science of the brain is so essential to the work that you do. Let's start by examining the early stages of brain development. Our exploration is going to begin in the prenatal stage. Brain development begins when the neural tube forms, which eventually becomes the brain and the spinal cord. By the end of the first trimester, the most basic brain structures are in place, and neurons are being generated at an astounding rate of up to 250,000 neurons per minute. As the brain develops, it forms layers and connections with billions of neurons migrating to their designated locations. By the time a baby is born, the brain has already formed nearly all of the neurons that it will ever have, but yet they're not fully connected. Even in the womb, the brain is responsive to external stimuli, sounds, movements, even the mother's emotional state, beginning to form the pathways that will shape a child's sensory processing, emotional regulation, and learning abilities. The prenatal environment, including factors like stress and nutrition, sets the stage for a lifetime of cognitive and emotional development. After birth, during infancy, a child enters a critical brain period of rapid growth and development, often referred to as the postnatal brain development phase. During this time, it's the connections, the synapses, that take center stage. This period is marked by three major types of development: synaptogenesis, myelination, and synaptic pruning, which we'll cover in more detail in just a few minutes. At this stage, the brain is highly responsive to experiences and stimuli, which actively shape its structure and function. This is why the experiences that children have, language, play, social interactions, are so essential. The brain is not just growing in size, it's also being sculpted based on the environment, helping to lay the foundation for future learning, memory, and emotional development. And here's a fun fact for you. 60% of an infant's energy intake from food is used for brain growth and development. Today, I want to spend a little bit more time exploring the development of the brain within early childhood. As you can imagine, a brain of a child looks vastly different from that of an adult. And it might be tempting to think that the brain simply grows larger, but it is far more complex than that. Let's set the foundation of our knowledge about the child's brain in three main areas: morphology, connectivity, and functionality. The morphology of the young brain develops in three important ways. First, the young brain undergoes rapid growth and development during early childhood. This includes significant increases in brain volume, particularly in areas like the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for higher cognitive functions, such as decision-making, attention, and emotional regulation. One of the largest changes after birth is the dramatic increase in the number of connections, those synapses, that neurons make with other neurons. Synaptogenesis occurs so rapidly that the total number of synapses increases more than tenfold within that first year of life. Researchers estimate that synapses form at a staggering rate of 4.3 million per minute during the peak periods of synaptogenesis. Synaptogenesis occurs most rapidly in the primary sensory and motor areas first, followed by association areas and the prefrontal cortex. This makes sense from a functional point of view. A baby needs basic sensory and motor skills before more complex skills can develop. Following this period of rapid synaptic growth, the brain also undergoes synaptic pruning, where unused or less active synapses are eliminated. The process helps to refine and strengthen the neural networks that are most frequently used, leading to more efficient brain function. And it might be tempting to think of pruning as bad, but in fact, it is just the opposite. Pruning is essential to the development of, among other things, children gaining fine motor skills. And here's another fun fact for you. By adulthood, this number of synapses in the adult brain is about 40% less than that during the peak period of childhood. Let's also examine the connectivity of the early brain. Neurons are not the only cell type in the brain. Glial cells are essential in supporting the architecture of the brain and provide scaffolding during early development, which allows the neurons to move to distant areas within the brain. Another key function of glial cells is myelination, where the axons of neurons are coated with a fatty substance called myelin. Myelin is actually a liquid protein that wraps itself around certain axons, creating an insulation effect that allows for more rapid condensation of action potentials. A baby's brain is relatively unmyelinated, which means that the brain regions cannot interact quickly in an infant. Myelination enhances the speed and efficiency of signal transmission between those neurons, which in turn increases the integration of brain regions. During the first year, sensory and motor skills become myelinated. Later, myelination occurs for connections between the integrated systems, such as those that connect the cortical and the subcortical areas. The consequence of these changes is that the brain regions become more structurally connected, increasing the amount of communication between regions. This integration is crucial for things like emotional regulation, decision-making, and social interactions. So now let's look at the functionality of the young brain. Since myelination is providing an enhanced structural framework for communication, it would be expected that the coordinated activity between regions also changes during these developmental phases. As we already discussed, early life is characterized by intense synaptogenesis and pruning, referred to by neuroscience as blooming and pruning. And this results in the young brain experiencing high plasticity, meaning it is highly capable of reorganizing itself in response to learning and experience. We'll return to plasticity in a few minutes due to its complex yet critical role in learning. Needless to say, the changes in the brain structure and function are mirrored by changes in the cognitive and behavioral repertoire of children. Babbling precedes talking, and crawling precedes walking. These changes occur in an orderly fashion and at predictable ages, and they are known as developmental milestones. Beyond the physiological changes of the brain is also shaped by environmental experiences. There are periods of heightened sensitivity to the environment and to experiences, and these are referred to as critical periods or sensitive periods, where growth is happening quickly. Because it's far more difficult to alter neural circuits after these periods, experiences during these windows have a special role in shaping the young brain. Circuits that process lower level information mature earlier than those that process higher levels of information. For example, in the neural hierarchy that analyzes visual information, low-level circuits that process color, shape, and motion are fully matured long before the higher-level circuits that interpret complex stimuli, such as facial expressions. For the developing brain, this means that the ability to perceive simple aspects of the world and to make emotional and social judgment develops long before the ability to engage in sophisticated reasoning and decision-making. Because brain networks mature at different rates, the windows of malleability differ across brain structures, and there is evidence that multiple sensitive periods happen within human brain development. For example, the visual system develops rapidly during those first 6 months of life, and it's driven by the visual experience, specifically light entering the eye once the baby opens his or her eyes. Once the baby reaches 6 months of age, the visual system is much less likely to change in response to visual experience. Another example is, of course, language acquisition, which occurs rapidly and seemingly without effort during those first few years of life. Once the children hear sounds, words, and structures of language that they hear repeatedly during this period of time, after the age of about 7, learning a new language becomes far more difficult. So now that we've had an understanding of the brain's morphology, connectivity, and functionality, let's examine the critical influences of early brain development. Let's start with genetics. Genetics play a significant role in the role of a child's brain development. Each individual inherits a unique set of genes that determine their brain structure and function. Genetic mutations or variations certainly can cause neurodevelopmental disorders like autism, ADHD, and learning disorders. However, the brain is not solely pre-programmed by genes. Genes do interact with the environment. For example, in combination, the interactions between genes and environment can influence how a child's brain develops in response to things like nutrition, prenatal exposure to toxins, or early experiences like social interactions or sensory experiences. Additionally, epigenetics can modify the gene expression without changing the underlying DNA structure, meaning that environmental factors can turn off or turn on certain genes. Adequate nutrition during pregnancy and early childhood is essential for healthy brain development. Important nutrients like proteins and omega-3 fatty acids, vitamins and minerals like iron and zinc are vital to the proper development of a child's brain. Additionally, maintaining overall health by ensuring regular exercise or movement, proper sleep, and routine medical checkups further contribute to healthy development. Exposure to high stress and trauma can have long-lasting effects. Experienced as a result of abuse, neglect, or other traumatic events, chronic and toxic stress can damage the brain's architecture and impair cognitive function. But I do want to note that providing support, resources, and nurturing care to children who have experienced stress and trauma can help mitigate these negative effects. And as this group would expect, parent-child interactions are a critical role in brain development. As children are exposed to verbal communication from their parents or caregivers, they start to learn the basic structure of their native language. Daily activities like reading bedtime stories or simply talking during meal times allow children to develop these invaluable language skills. Positive parent-child interactions also contribute significantly to a child's emotional and social development. Early experiences play a vital role in a child's cognitive development. Engaging in play with peers or caregivers helps to create neural networks and connections and promote brain plasticity. Early learning opportunities also foster the growth of essential cognitive skills, such as attention and memory. Participating in movement or sensory-rich experiences encourages the development of fine and gross motor skills, balance, and coordination. And engaging children in activities like promoting exploration, experimentation, and creative thinking can help strengthen the ability to analyze situations, to generate solutions, and to adapt to new situations. And finally, one's surroundings play a critical role in establishing a sense of security and predictability. High-quality early education programs led by skilled and well-trained teachers can significantly impact cognitive, social, and emotional development, and are particularly valuable to children from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. Benefits of early childhood education include improved cognitive development, enhanced social skills, stronger emotional regulation, and stronger academic success in the future. I do want to return to the concept of plasticity due to its importance in learning. First, we should differentiate between adaptive and maladaptive plasticity. Maladaptive plasticity are those changes that occur within the structure or function of the brain that are not desired. They often happen as a result of injury or illness. Adaptive plasticity is what most people are referring to when they think about the concept. Adaptive or positive plasticity are the changes that allow the brain to continue and grow and develop over the course of a lifetime. During childhood, the brain undergoes 3 types of plasticity, all related to experience. And in these terms, experience refers to the interaction of a child with his or her environment. Experience-independent plasticity involves brain changes that take place regardless of the environment and unfold over time in a tightly regulated series of events. Fetal brain development would be an example of experience-independent plasticity, because humans, in fact, all mammals, experience a series of brain changes in the womb that are remarkably similar across individuals. Experience-expended changes, by contrast, do not unfold until they are triggered by specific environmental cues that the brain expects to encounter. For example, the visual cortex is not fully functional until infants open their eyes, and children do not learn language until they hear speech. And finally, experience-dependent plasticity refers to the ways neural pathways are strengthened through repeated engagement. They become more efficient over time. In contrast with the largely predictable forms of brain maturing that most people share, experience-dependent changes are unique to each individual, reflecting the remarkable range of human social environments and cultures, and the particular activities in which individuals engage. The developmental stage of brain plasticity and development ends around the age of 25. For the sake of comparison, let's look at the adult brain and how it compares in structure and function. By the age of 25, approximately, the adult brain has stabilized the growth. The overall brain volume stabilizes, and most growth and structural changes are behind us. And although the adult brain can still learn, it no longer experiences the critical periods that we see in childhood. This makes certain types of learning far more challenging. The adult brain also has a fully developed prefrontal cortex, leading to better regulation of emotions, more sophisticated decision-making, and the ability to plan and think abstractly. Also in adulthood, neural circuits are largely established with well-defined pathways that have been strengthened through years of experience and learning. But that's not to say that nothing is happening in there. Synapses, while their formation will slow, there is still plenty of synaptogenesis that occurs, mostly in response to learning. And while pruning continues, it is less pronounced. The adult brain focuses more on maintaining neural pathways and refining them based on experience and use. And myelination continues through adulthood, particularly in complex areas like the prefrontal cortex, but it does occur at a much slower pace. The brain focuses more on maintaining those myelinated pathways rather than creating brand new ones. Generally, the adult brain is going to emphasize efficiency over flexibility. It relies on established pathways, which allow for quick and efficient processing of familiar tasks, but it may limit adaptability to new situations. And while the adult brain certainly retains plasticity, particularly in response to learning, positive, or injury, negative, it is far less plastic than the young brain. Learning new skills or recovering from injury takes more time. So most of my work is with adult students and teaching adults how to maximize learning and growth. So you can imagine that this image is never one of the most popular in my presentations. To summarize neuroplasticity over the lifetime, the ability to change diminishes as the effort needed to change increases. The reality is, after about the age of 25, all adaptive neuroplasticity must be self-directed, meaning adults must want to learn, must bring high levels of attention and focus to learning, and must generally work much harder to learn new skills. But let's not end this section on a low note. I want to introduce you to Jeanne Clement, a French woman who holds the record for the longest living human whose age has been verified. She lived 122 years and 164 days. Born in 1875 and passing away in 1997, she led an interesting life. She met Van Gogh when she was 13. She didn't only live a long life, but she was healthy and independent. She was only 88 when she lost her last close relative, yet she lived on her own until she was 110. She allowed herself one glass of port and one cigarette a day. Scientists were intrigued by how her brain could maintain cognitive function into such extreme age. A true testament to the brain's ability to change. At 118, she became a research subject and underwent cognitive training where she was able to demonstrate significant improvements in tests on verbal recall and math. Her life underscores the brain's remarkable capacity for resilience, and her case highlights the importance of studying neuroplasticity and how it can help protect against age-related cognitive decline. Her longevity contributes to our understanding of sustaining brain health across a lifespan. Now let's take a moment for a brain check. We'll have a few of these during our session. You can either write down your responses or simply recall the information in your mind. What two specific ways can the brain change during early childhood? And how can you describe plasticity in your own words? So for that first question, if you found or recalled myelination or synaptic pruning or synaptogenesis or even plasticity, you would be right. And for question number 2, plasticity is the brain's ability to change in response to experiences. Now that we have a solid understanding of how the young brain operates, let's move from the neuroscience textbook to actionable strategies. For the next section of today's presentation, I'm going to share optimizing educational strategies that can be used in early childhood classrooms. I said in my introduction, as educators and professionals working with children, you are not just teaching them the skills and knowledge, you are helping to sculpt their neural pathways. And that wasn't just part of a fluffy introduction. We are going to talk now about how neurobiology drives 3 essential functions of learning: attention, emotional regulation, and memory. Understanding the cognitive processes underlying these skills is crucial for designing effective educational strategies that can optimize learning in children. So let's start with attention. So from a neurological perspective, attention is the ability to flexibly control limited computational resources. We can also think about it maybe from a psychological perspective as the ability to actively process specific information in the environment while tuning out other details. But no matter how we think about it, attention is limited in both capacity and duration. There are quite a few types of attention. There's sustained attention, right? The ability to maintain focus on a specific task over an extended period of time. This helps our children to engage in learning activities without becoming distracted. Selective attention is the ability to focus on a specific piece of information while ignoring other irrelevant things. This helps our children to filter out distractions and concentrate on a task. And finally, divided attention, the ability to process multiple sources of information simultaneously. While multitasking can be a challenge for young children, developing divided attention can help them manage multiple demands in a learning environment. Before we take a look at the neural components of attention, we have to take a small step back, because the reality is that before we can bring attention or focus to anything, we need the ability to be alert. The neurobiology of alertness involves the neurotransmitter epinephrine, also referred to as adrenaline. It binds to receptors and it increases the activity in the neurons. You could kind of think about it as the brain's alarm system, quickly preparing the body for action. It's also what's responsible for our fight or flight response. Epinephrine in the system sharpens our focus. And in terms of learning and memory, it makes certain situations more memorable. Essentially, I wanted to touch on alertness because it is required to produce the environment where attention can occur. So attention involves several interconnected brain regions, including the prefrontal cortex, which is particularly important for sustaining attention and managing distractions. The parietal cortex, which is involved in orienting our attention, and the anterior cingulate cortex, which helps to monitor conflict and regulate attention. Acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter that allows us to filter out sensory information and allow us to direct our attention. Acetylcholine acts like a spotlight to help us focus. Neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine play key roles in modulating attention. Dopamine in particular is associated with reward-based learning, motivation, and drive, all which influence attention. So what do we know about the development of attention in children? First, we know that the ability to direct our attention develops over time. The prefrontal cortex continues to mature into the mid-20s. Younger children typically have shorter attention spans and are more susceptible to distractions. Second, we know that attention is experience dependent, meaning it is highly influenced by a child's experiences. Environments that provide opportunities for focused, goal-directed activities can help strengthen attention in the brain. We also know that children differ in their capacity for attention. We know that these changes can be due to things like genetic predispositions or temperament. And understanding these differences can help educators in tailoring strategies to meet the individual needs of the student, because we view attention as a buildable skill, one that can continue to be honed and developed. Those elements are widely acknowledged, but I also want to bring your attention to some neuroscience findings around attention in children. First, attentional skills develop beginning in the prenatal and postnatal periods of life. Research also supports that executive attention, meaning control from the prefrontal cortex, has a rapid period of growth between the ages of 2 and 7, almost like a growth spurt. It's also generally accepted that there are genetic differences in one's ability to attend or to focus, but they are actually really poor predictors of executive control in adults. We know that environmental factors, specifically caregiver behaviors, are significant contributors to the ability to increase attentional skills. Finally, we talked about tailoring strategies because attention is a buildable skill. There is wide research that supports that yoga and breathing exercises are shown to support attention both in children and in children with clinically diagnosed ADHD. So in the last few minutes, you've heard the salient points from the research into attention in children. Now, I want to provide you with evidence-based educational strategies that you can employ in your classrooms in an easily memorable format. So using the acronym ENGAGE, let's look at ENGAGE, strategies to optimize attention. Eliminate distractions. Structuring the learning environment to reduce distractions can help students focus better. This might include the classroom layout, minimizing noise, or using visual cues to guide attention. Nurture movement. Physical movement and short breaks can help reset attention. Activities like brain breaks or simply incorporating movement into the learning tasks can re-energize the brain and improve focus. Grow attentional skills for G. Explicitly teaching children strategies to improve attention, such as mindfulness exercises, can enhance the ability to focus. Mindfulness has been shown to increase sustained attention by training children to be aware of their thoughts and to redirect focus when their mind wanders. A is for activate multisensory learning. Lessons that engage multiple senses, sight, sound, touch, can capture and maintain children's attention more efficiently. Incorporating hands-on activities, visual aids, and interactive content can build engagement and sustain attention. Guide with goals. Activities that have clear goals and are considered meaningful by children are more likely to capture attention. Encourage goal setting and milestone accomplishments to maintain focus and motivation. And finally, encourage through feedback. Positive reinforcement when a child demonstrates good attentional skills can strengthen that behavior. This can be done through praise, rewards, or other forms of acknowledgement. All right, time for another brain check. You can jot down your answers, or you can simply recall them in your mind. What two brain areas are associated with attention? And name one neuroscience-based strategy that can be used to optimize attention. So the brain areas associated with attention. Perhaps you said the prefrontal cortex, or the parietal lobe, or maybe the ACC, the anterior cingulate cortex. And any one of the engage strategies, maybe eliminating distractions or nurturing movement, could have been used for the second question. But now let's turn our attention to another essential skill, emotional regulation. Emotional regulation involves active attempts to maintain or change emotions and is a critical life skill that does positively influence positive outcomes later in life. The ability to regulate one's emotions can serve many purposes, but it can also enhance or inhibit learning. We can think about different aspects of emotional regulation. We can think about intrinsic regulation, right? Our abilities to manage our emotions internally, calming ourselves, or managing frustrations. This is a critical skill for children as they learn to navigate social situations and academic challenges. We can think of extrinsic regulation. This is where something external is helping us to regulate our emotions. This might be a caregiver or a teacher helping. This is especially important when children are still developing their internal regulation. And we can think about adaptive regulation, the ability to modify emotional responses according to a situation, such as shifting from anger to problem solving in response to a challenge. And when we look at the key brain areas of emotional regulation, we can see some overlap with attention. We see the prefrontal cortex and the anterior cingulate cortex responsible for managing emotions and controlling impulses. We also see the amygdala. The amygdala is involved with processing emotional responses, particularly fear and stress. But sometimes the popular media likes to call the amygdala the fear center. But I think it would be more accurate to call it the emotional center of the brain. The hippocampus also plays an important role in contextualizing emotions for us. The neurotransmitters that are active during emotional regulation include serotonin, responsible for mood stabilization. What else? Dopamine, the neurotransmitter that affects drive and reward-based learning and motivation, and cortisol, the stress response. So what do we know about the general development of emotional regulation in children? Well, just like attention, we know that it develops gradually, that younger children tend to rely more on external regulation from adults as they develop that internal process themselves. We also know that it's experience dependent, right? Highly influenced by the child's environment, experiences, and buildable, or maybe I should say changeable, right? Because that happens both positively and negatively. Emotional regulation is supported by nurturing environments, but it is also impaired by things like chronic stress. We know that emotional regulation is a key contributor to one's stress resilience. We also know that there's wide research support for teaching mindfulness as an evidence-based strategy to increase emotional regulation in children. And now let's look at the science findings, most recent around emotional regulation in children. First, we know that the emotional regulation matures over time, specifically because the prefrontal cortex and the brain region connectivity is developing over time. We know the importance of modeling from parents and role models is especially significant in terms of developing emotional regulation. We also know that sleep duration and quality during one's infancy predicts emotional regulation and self-regulation skills in toddlers. A clue to the vital role of sleep and emotional regulation. So I hope you're ready for another acronym because I now want to share SMART strategies for optimizing emotional regulation. First, S, safe and supportive environment. A secure and supportive learning environment can help children feel safe and calm, reducing stress and allowing for better emotional regulation. This might include consistent routines, clear expectations, or a caring environment. It doesn't necessarily imply that there's no stress in the classroom. Gradually exposing children to mildly stressful situations in a controlled environment can help them develop resiliency and better emotional regulation. This could include role-playing scenarios where they practice coping skills. The M is for mindfulness and relaxation techniques. Things such as deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, or guided imagery can help children learn to calm themselves and manage stress. Mindfulness and relaxation techniques help them to engage their parasympathetic nervous system. And these techniques work by activating the prefrontal cortex and reducing activity in the amygdala. A is for acknowledge and express emotions. Explicitly teaching children to recognize and label their emotions can help them better understand and manage their feelings. Techniques such as emotion charts or guided discussions about feelings can be very helpful. My mind goes immediately to Brené Brown's book on the Atlas of Emotion. R is for reinforce positive emotional responses. When educators and caregivers model appropriate emotional responses and provide positive reinforcement when children do it well, it reinforces the neural pathways associated with these behaviors. And finally, T, teach social emotional learning. SEL programs that teach skills such as empathy, relationship building, and cognitive conflict resolution can enhance emotional regulation by providing children with the tools to manage their emotions. All right, and as we conclude our learning about emotional regulation, jot down or simply recall to your mind, identify one aspect of what we know about emotional regulation in early childhood, and then name one neuroscience-based strategy that can be used to optimize educational emotional regulation. All right, and if you jotted down things like we know that it develops gradually, that it is experience dependent, that it contributes to stress resiliency, or that mindfulness plays an important part as an evidence-based strategy, you would be right. And you could use any of the SMART strategies: acknowledging and expressing emotions, reinforcing positive emotional responses, or teaching SEL skills. You will be right on. So the last topic I want to chat about today is memory. Memory is an essential cognitive function that permits individuals to acquire, retain, recover data that really defines our identity. It comes with a process with distinct steps like encoding, consolidation, recovery, and reconsolidation. There are certain types of memory that we can explore separately. Short-term memory, right? The ability to hold a small amount of information in an active, readily available state for a brief, limited period of time. Definitely limited in capacity and duration, holding about 5 to 9 elements for about 20 to 30 seconds. A form of short-term memory, working memory, involves the manipulation or the processing of information, essential for things like problem solving, reasoning, and comprehension tasks. We can also think about long-term memory, the storage of information over extended periods, potentially even a lifetime. It includes both declarative memories, facts and events, and procedural memories, how to do things, right? Skills, habits. We can also define memory by episodic versus semantic memory. Episodic memory refers to the ability to recall personal experiences and specific events in life, while semantic memory involves the recall of general facts and knowledge. The key brain regions for memory include something we haven't seen yet, the hippocampus, right? You cannot talk about memory without talking about the hippocampus. And really, you have two. It sounds like maybe hippocampi would be a better term for it. But you have two. They look like little seahorses, or at least that's what somebody thought in aloud a long time ago. And they sit kind of right above your ears. The hippocampus is central to the formation of new memories, particularly declarative, fact-based memories. And the hippocampus supports consolidating memories from short-term to long-term memory. The prefrontal cortex is also involved in working memory. The prefrontal cortex is critical for tasks that require the integration of new information with existing information. We also see our friend the amygdala strongly associated with emotional memories. The amygdala modulates memory consolidation by attaching emotional significance to events. This is why emotionally charged events are often remembered more vividly. And finally, the cerebellum. Really important for procedural memory, skills and habits like riding a bike or typing. The cerebellum helps to automate these learned tasks so they can be performed with very little conscious effort. We see many of the same neurotransmitters. We see serotonin, mood stabilization, dopamine for driving motivation, and cortisol, which might be counterintuitive, but low levels of stress do positively influence memory. As we think about the development of memory within children, we know that the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex develops over time with significant growth during early childhood and continuing into adolescence. So young children typically have less effective memory processes. They rely more on repetition and external aids. We also know, just like attention and emotional regulation, that memory is experience dependent. It is highly influenced by experiences in the environment. Repeated exposure to information and the use of things like mnemonic devices can strengthen memory processes in children. When we look at the neuroscience findings around memory with children, we see that napping is crucial for memory development in the memory retention of children. And it's not just children, right? Napping can help all of us. We also see research that says that higher levels of parental speech is associated with higher levels of the white matter in our brains. We have white matter and we have gray matter. White matter is involved in information processing and language acquisition. That finding reminds me of that old study, the 30 million word gap, that has been largely discounted primarily because of sample size. We also often wonder about memories of very young children. When can children remember things that happened in their lives? Well, there is a lot of evidence that shows that young children do have episodic memories of very early life, even before they're 1 year old, but they forget those as they go through later stages of brain development. So if you're ready, I'm ready for our last acronym of the day. I want to offer you RECALL, strategies to optimize memory. Repetition. Regular review and repetition of material helps to consolidate information from short-term to long-term. Spacing out reviews or spaced repetition is particularly effective in retaining information over time. E is for engage multiple senses. Engaging multiple senses can enhance memory by creating stronger, more varied neural connections. Using multiple senses allows the same memory to be encoded multiple pathways, which allows the information to be more accessible when it's time to recall it. Chunking information. Breaking down large amounts of information into smaller, more manageable chunks can help children to store and recall information more effectively. For example, breaking a vocabulary list down into thematic groups. A, associate with existing knowledge. Helping children to make those connections between new knowledge and what they already know enhances memory retention. This process, known as elaborative rehearsal, involves integrating new information into those previously existing cognitive structures. The L is for leverage mnemonics. Teaching children mnemonic devices such as acronyms and rhymes, visualization techniques can help them encode and retrieve information more easily. And the final L is for link emotionally. Sense learning is connected to emotion, creating lessons that evoke positive emotions or relevance to the child's life can improve memory retention. All right, and I promise you this is the last brain check of the day. Identify one aspect of what we know about the development of memory in early childhood, and identify one neuroscience-based strategy that can be used to optimize memory. Maybe for question number one, you've emphasized how the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex develop over time. So that means the efficiency of memory in children also develops over time. Maybe you highlighted the fact that it's experience dependent, just like attention and emotional regulation. Maybe you remembered that napping is an important part of memory retention in children and a few other people. And for the neuroscience-based strategies, maybe you remembered one that you connected well with, maybe multi-senses within the learning process, or maybe bringing emotion, positive emotion into the learning experience. So over the last about 20 minutes, we have learned about the neurobiology of attention, emotional regulation, and memory. We have transferred neurobiological information and scholarly evidence to consider strategies that can be employed in classrooms to hone these important learning abilities that are so actively developing in children. So what do these three elements have in common? I'll give you one hint. Okay, I'll give you another hint. And if you're guessing sleep, you are absolutely correct. Having a good night's sleep is the key to maintaining physical, mental, and cognitive health. Our bodies know this, and it's been repeatedly shown in high-quality research. Sufficient high-quality sleep is essential for our ability to focus and concentrate. All aspects of attention are easier after a good night of sleep. Likewise, if you have ever found yourself quick to anger or frustration after a bad night of sleep, you know its connection to emotional regulation. Likewise, memory lapses or an inability to focus long-term enough to learn something, right, is much harder after short or disrupted sleep. So in our remaining few minutes, let's look at the recent findings that are building our knowledge on the power of sleep. We'll start with our findings of sleep and attention. Getting enough high-quality sleep fosters attention and concentration, which are prerequisites for most learning. Scientists measuring sleepiness have found that sleep deprivation definitely leads to lower alertness and concentration. Since it's more difficult to focus and pay attention, you're also more easily confused, and this hampers your ability to perform tasks that require logical reasoning and complex thought. Sleepiness also impairs judgment. Making decisions is more difficult because you can't assess situations as well or pick the right behavior. An interesting study out of the Michigan State University Sleep and Learning Lab showed how the loss of sleep affects not only our ability to focus, but also how well we can follow complex instructions, which is something they termed peacekeeping. Participants were split into two groups and took part in tasks. One measured reaction time to a stimulus, and the other measured this peacekeeping ability, how well they could follow a structure of complex tasks. One group was kept in the lab and kept awake all night, and the other group got to go home and go to sleep. In the morning, when they were retested using the same exact tasks as the night before, the group that was sleep deprived had double the amount of peacekeeping errors and triple the amount of lapses in attention. A large recent meta-analysis shows that there is consensus with patients who have sleep disorders and their ability to perform on attentional tasks. They perform worse, especially on tasks that require sustained attention. Finally, poor sleep quality has a greater impact on selective and divided attention as they rely heavily on the prefrontal cortex. In examining the neuroscience findings on sleep and emotional regulation, sleep appears to be essential to our ability to cope with emotional stress in everyday life, whereas the deprivation of sleep makes us more emotionally aroused and sensitive to stressful situations. Dr. Matthew Walker, a preeminent sleep researcher and author of one of my favorite books, Why We Sleep, he and his team set out to examine how sleep affects the activation of the brain's amygdala. They assigned participants to either a normal sleep group or a sleep deprived group, and they kept those people awake for 35 hours. They showed both groups 100 images, first emotionally neutral, but progressing to unpleasant and even disturbing, all while using functional MRI scans to measure brain activity. As expected, both groups had greater amygdala activation in response to more negative pictures. But the intensity and volume of activation was significantly amplified in the sleep-deprived group. Walker reported that the amygdalas were more than 60% more reactive in the sleep-deprived subjects than the subjects who had a normal night of sleep. It is also well established that sleep directly increases stress and aggression. Without enough healthy sleep, emotional reactivity to negative events seems to be enhanced, and positive reactions to positive events are subdued. And it really becomes a vicious cycle in which sleep deprivation compromises emotional regulation and results in increased negative emotion, which in turn disrupts sleep, leading to further impairments to our well-being. And close to my home in Baltimore, a research group from Johns Hopkins University found that sleep continuity disruptions are more detrimental to positive mood than the same amount of shortened sleep, meaning waking up several times through the night is far more detrimental to positive moods than getting the same amount of sleep without interruption. In the study, those who were forced to awaken multiple times in the night saw a reduction of 31% in positive mood, while the delayed bedtime group shortened amount of sleep had only a decline of about 12%. And finally, as we turn our attention to the relationship between sleep and memory, research shows us the importance of sleep both before and after learning. Sleep before learning refreshes our ability to form new memories, and this happens nightly. It happens nightly because that hippocampi have limited capacity, and limited capacity means once it's reached, we cannot store new memories, or even worse, new memories get written over older ones, something known as inference forgetting. We also know that sleep after learning protects newly acquired information during that consolidation phase. That deep non-REM sleep, the sleep that we get in the early part of the night, is the most beneficial for fact-based or textbook-like memory. Non-REM sleep allows movement from the temporary storage of memories in the hippocampus to more permanent storage locations in the cortex. And there is mounting evidence that during sleep, the brain employs various combinations of brain waves to consolidate learning in a specific brain region, and then it connects that learning to other parts of the brain using a different brainwave frequency. Relationship between sleep and memory in the adult brain are well established. However, there are recent controversial discussions about the robustness of sleep-mediated memory benefits in children. We know that children sleep longer and more deeply than adults, and since childhood is that time of rapid learning, it may imply that the additional length and depth of sleep is supporting those outcomes. Additional research is needed to understand how sleep-dependent memory consolidation happens in children. Significant research challenges exist. Among them, the ethics of manipulating sleep in young children, of course, and at-home compliance during studies. So I feel like there might be one lingering question in your minds. What's up with all the brain checks throughout the session? Well, consider this your neuroscience finding in action. A bonus neuroscience learning tip, if you will. One of the most reliable supports for learning has been shown to be testing yourself. We often think about testing as a means for evaluating our mastery of learned material, but multiple findings replicated in many settings and in many groups of participants show that testing is a highly effective tool for learning. Self-testing can be casual, but when it happens soon after exposure to new material and using short answer responses allows you to recall what you've just covered. And that recall is what supports the long-term retention of knowledge. And with that, we conclude our time together. I hope that over the last hour, you have gained both technical knowledge and practical evidence-based strategies to support your professional development and your early childhood classrooms. I think that the importance of your work bears repeating. As educators and professionals working with children, it is not just the teaching of skills and knowledge that you are doing. You are helping to sculpt their neural pathways, laying the groundwork for their future potential. That is the incredible power that you hold in your hands. And that's why understanding the science of the brain is so essential to the work that you do. Thank you so much for your time and attention. It was a joy to learn with you today.